36. Mr. Vice Chairman Sir, I am thankful to the House for the elaborate debate on this bill. At the outset, I would like to classify the points made into 3 or 4 categories and deal with them. It was asked in the course of the debate why all the banks had not been nationalized and why only 6 banks were nationalized. Another question that was asked was why all the foreign banks should not be nationalized. The other question was what the logic was in saying that banks with a deposit of over rupees 200 crores must be nationalized and what the sanctity of that figure was. The last question that was asked was why we had chosen 14th of March while we are going actually on nationalize them from the 15th of April. These relate to the structure of nationalization and I shall deal with all of them together. So far as the question why all the banks are not nationalized is concerned, government do not propose to nationalize all the banks. That is not the policy. Their policy is to have a commanding position in the credit. That is what they want to achieve. In order to achieve that, they have nationalized those banks which will give them as much as 90% of the total deposits in the country. There is no need to nationalize all the banks. The smaller banks do serve the small people and also serve in the small areas. Therefore, it is better to leave these small banks to do some service to the smaller areas. That is the reason why we did not, and I state categorically that we do not propose to nationalize all the banks. The next question is why the foreign banks are not nationalized. This has been answered several times. The reason is that we have a number of branches of our banks serving abroad and there are several branches of foreign banks serving in our country. There is a principle of mutuality and if we want our banks to function in the other countries, we cannot refuse permission to other banks in other countries to function in our country. The second point that I would further make in this connection is that the foreign banks have only 4% of the entire deposit in the country and they cater to a very specialized area mainly relating to foreign trade and a little tourism. They do not enter into our field of activity in agriculture, small scale industries and large industries. We do not lose anything by allowing the foreign banks to function in our country. On the contrary, by having our branches abroad, we are not only to project our trade in those areas, but also serve our people who are resident in those areas to take advantage of Indian banks there. The next question is why we choose banks with deposits of rupees 200 crores. Honorable members are aware that whenever we want to nationalize, we have to bring it under a classification. The classification should be reasonable. Otherwise, the Supreme Court will say that it is an unreasonable classification and it could be attacked on the ground that there has been either an ulterior or other extraneous motivation. The next bank after this deposit limit is one which is only rupees 150 crores bank. Thus, we looked into the list of banks. We took as a cut-off point one on which there would be a great difference between the banks that would be nationalized and the next one which would not be nationalized. This gave us 6 banks. Their deposits taken together with the 14 banks already nationalized raised to total command of nationalized banks to 90% of the deposits in the country. We thought that it was quite a reasonable control over the credit institutions. That is the reason why we chose rupees 200 crore limit. The next question is why we choose the 14th of March while we actually nationalized on the 15th April. You are aware that we have to get statistics from the various banks, and the latest statistics that we could get from all the banks were a month earlier, that is around 14th March. We cannot get statistics of the previous day. It takes time to get the statistics and the data. If the honorable members remember, even at the time of previous nationalization, there was exactly a month's difference between the date on which the banks were nationalized and the date chosen for ascertaining the deposit condition for nationalization. Indeed, the government deserves compliment for the extraordinary secrecy with which the banks have been nationalized. If the information had leaked out even half an hour earlier, manipulations would have taken place and the whole scheme would have come under very violent criticism. Now, I will take up a suggestion made with regard to the working of the banks. The point made was that agriculture should be given a higher priority and that agricultural credit was not served adequately. Stop.